And now we are joined by Ray Kelm, who's part of our GameSparks team. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. Tell us a bit about GameSparks.
Sure. GameSparks is a service that helps game developers build the back end for a connected game experience. If you're building a game that has an online component of it, something where you're maybe playing against other players or sharing information, like hey, look, I I have a new high score. Uh, GameSparks provides the features that help make that easier.
Excellent. Okay. Um, let's see. Where should we start? Kind of what is the like you said easier, but are we talking about for players, for architects, for developers? Where
Yeah.
and how does someone get started here?
For architects, it's or for game developers really. The main thing here is that we provide the mechanisms that let you scale your game. If you have a lot of times, especially for smaller studios, you may not have dedicated people that you can say that this person's working just on running our system. Uh, a lot of times they have to have multiple hats.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, we basically support all of the scaling that's necessary, authentication and authorization. Something that is it's something that it's sometimes hard to get right, and it's something that the cost of getting it wrong can be pretty high, and you just don't have to worry about it. It's already taken care of.
So I understand that the GameSpark service, it's in preview, right? So
Yes.
what are the key features that are available?
So currently uh, we have a Unity plugin that lets you build your game. It basically gives you all the software components that run in the actual game to connect to our service. It connects via WebSocket. That gives you a persistent connection that is live during the entire gameplay session. That
Mm-hmm.
lets you send messages in both directions. So, for example, you can have something in your game that will send a message back to the server, and maybe something else where, due to some kind of reaction or something that happens with another player, we can send a message to that game client. We have data storage for player information. Uh, we have hooks to let you directly manipulate data that's in DynamoDB. We have a call out to the Lambda functions, so that if you want to say augment your code with something that goes a little bit beyond what we've already anticipated, you can jump out into Lambda and do that. And finally, we have kind of our main feature here, which is called Cloud Code, and that's the one that lets you put JavaScript code running essentially in our serverless solution that is what reacts to the messages that are received and sends messages out to players, does the storage, calls Lambda, etc.
So that's quite a bit of heavy lifting that it's doing
There's a lot there,
for developers,
and again, this is just preview. We have other
right?
features that are coming, and that's more down the road.
So
Cool.
I'm the exact age where I didn't get into to gaming at all because it was such a non-respectable thing to do when I was a teenager. So I somehow totally missed the boat when it came to gaming because that was to me it was like quarters and arcades and don't tell your friends where you hang out because that would let you lose your last three remaining friends. So this is all still a little bit of a different world to me. Kind of when I think about the scaling challenges, what I do understand is like modern day games, they get very there's a long build up to the game actually launching, and
Yes.
everybody's waiting anxiously for the new game or the next kind of episode chapter. I don't know the right word of the game to pop up. Suddenly, you've got this gigantic onslaught of traffic that might last for hours or a day or two, and then maybe it subsides and it takes a while for it to build up again. Does GameSparks help with that situation?
Absolutely, yes. And you're right. Actually, developing a game can take anywhere from some of the very smallest games have been put together in just a few days even. Whereas larger games with the larger studio, you'll have some of the maybe years. In fact, I think there's probably some records there around like 10 years or something. So um, when you launch your game, though, I mean, you really hope like you're built. It's a creative process. You're saying, I'm building this thing that is it's a work of art, and it's playable art,
Mhm.
and you release it to the world, and the world says, yeah, this is great, or they say, yeah, it could be better. So you really don't know. You have a good idea. You've play tested. You've done things. But yeah, when you actually launch it, you might find maybe the most famous example there is there's a game, Flappy Bird. You may have heard of it.
I
That
have
was
heard of
that,
Flappy Bird.
that is something that someone put together in basically, I think it was under a week, and it suddenly became so popular that everyone was playing it. And you could go from no one playing it to literally millions of people playing it in just that much time.
Wow.
So we built our backend so that we can scale to be able to support what you need. So if your game becomes popular, our backend is built so that we can support that.
So as a
Okay.
developer, I don't need to worry about that scaling aspect of it, right?
Yeah,
I
that's
just focus on the creative parts of my game. Let somebody else take care of the infrastructure, the scaling, etc., etc.
exactly, and that's exactly the purpose really of GameSparks
Mm.
is letting the game developers focus on the creative parts, letting them focus on building the game that they want to build, rather than having to worry about how many servers do I need, and do I need to disable TLS 1.1 because it's a security flaw, or I need all those worries. We take care of that.
So it sounds to me like the game developers want to focus on the creativity, the art, the quality of the gameplay, but they have to then they get bogged down by the difficulties. Oh, I need to host this and I need to deal with messages and security and scaling and so forth. And what you're telling us today is like let's let AWS take care of that part so they can actually focus on on making something that's really fun and really playable.
Yeah, we like to say that we like to get out of the way. We like to make it so that your game can be the focus, and uh, the services that we provide are something that you have you understand how they work. You
Right.
plug them in and you use them.
So it's fully managed game solution.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does the aspiring game developer like how do they think about this in terms of architecture? They clearly need to start pretty early on. Like what are the some of the considerations that they should keep in mind as they're architecting for GameSparks?
I think that's going to vary. So that's one of the things that we've found as well, is that the game industry is it's such a widely variable place. Every game is different. I mentioned Flappy Bird. That's it's not actually an online game per se, but that type of game versus something, let's say Call of Duty, is
Mhm.
very different in terms of what has to be done.
Yeah.
So what we found is that their starting point is that you're looking at what are the things I want to be able to do between players. How do I want to be? What interactions do I want to be able to enable? And then
Mhm.
we have a set of primitives that you kind of plug into your game, so that you can say, I want to add add this piece in or add that piece in, and from there you can build on top of it.
So earlier you mentioned Unity integration. So what features are
Yes.
available there?
So in our Unity integration, we have a client that has um, basically you configure the client so that it can connect to the correct backend. It handles all of the auth. It handles all of the um, session management and so forth. You can still plug into those things. You can kind of tweak and tune how they work, but it has all of those pieces put together. And then we also have something where you can define, when you create your game, you can define new types of messages that you want to send and receive to your backend. And we have a feature that lets you generate the code that is necessary to run that in your game, so that way you don't have to like a lot of the like the low level parts that aren't the parts that you're excited about.
Yeah.
um, we just build those and it takes care of it.
Actually, that ties in nicely to this question from Liquid Surya. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I don't know. Does the back end have capabilities to manage game stat, timers, chat, rankings? I think we've answered some of these bits in different questions, but let's consolidate it all.
So currently for game state, we're using Dynamo. So the Dynamo extension that we have for timers and chat and rankings, those are not features that are yet available. Again, we're in preview right now. This is we're not actually exposing our full feature set. That'll be for our GA, which is later on. And we're listening to customers. The kind of the point of preview for us is to say, try this out. We're running in what we're calling dev mode only, where you are able to you're able to develop a game and try it out, but not actually run as a live game yet. And we're looking for feedback. We're looking for feedback to find out what are the things that work well, what are the things that don't work well, what are the features that our game developers want to have.
Okay, cool. So I understand that you've got a demo for us.
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Let's take a look.
Okay. So in this demo, I'm going to show a couple of different things. First, I'm going to show a little bit about how the code that you write on the server side works. It's JavaScript. It's very easy to use. There's not a whole lot to it. The idea is that it should be something that's kind of like a little bit of glue between your the messages that you might send and what happens in the back end. And you want to have those things running on the server because you want to make sure that they're server authoritative. In other words, this is something to help prevent your game from being hacked, for example. We're going to talk a little bit about how we debug that. And I'm going to show you an example of a game, and you can see it on the right side. We built a sample game that is mainly just there to kind of demonstrate some of the features that we have, some very specific features. So what we can see here is the Cloud Code interface. This lets us edit the code that runs when a specific message is passed. In this case, I'm showing the join room handler. The join room handler is, if you can see on the game on the right, there's a button that says join room. That's when I click that button, that's going to send a message to the service saying, I want to join a room. The way this game works, it's like I said, it's a very simple game. You can create a room, and a room is like a game session in this case. It gives you a code. You give that code to your friend enters the same code, when they click join room, and then you have a little kind of competition to see who can press the right buttons, and have the most accuracy. And then at the end of that, you compare scores and you decide who won. So it's very simple, like I said,
Simple game.
but it demonstrates talking between the two different components, essentially.
So Ray, does the game developer always work in the console, or are there like API or CLI access to editing, adding code, and so forth?
Oh yeah, everything we do is supported by both AWS SDK and AWS CLI. We do not yet have. We're in preview. We do not yet have CloudFormation, but we are looking forward to adding that. There's a lot of little dotting I's and crossing T's that we have to go through still.
Sure.
But absolutely, yeah. There's an API.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through this real quick and kind of show a simple game session, and I'm going to use another feature that we have, which is called Test Harness, to show how that actually works. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the game in one window, and then I'm going to simulate another player playing the window from the test harness in the other window. So in other words, sending the messages that client would send, and that kind of gives the ability to figure out what's happening in your game, to try things out. You would run this in your debugger and maybe try sending different messages so that you can change the behavior. So I'm going to create a room in this game. Hopefully I don't need to reconnect. I had this all set up earlier before we started. I suspect I should have. Okay, so I created a room. This room ID is P7MF. I'm going to copy that real quick. I'm going to go over here to our test harness, and I'm going to look at the join room. So this is right now the game is saying I'm waiting for this other player to join. So I'm going to populate an example here of this message, and I'm going to fill in that room ID, and I'm going to click send message. And you can see that here's where we said we sent the message, and the game has now said, oh, it's got a notification. So in other words, that backend feature said, I received a request from one player, and I sent a notification to the other player to tell them, hey, someone just joined. And right now our names are just player 1 and player 2, so it's not very exciting. It would be red versus blue or whatever. So I'm going to click start game, and what we should see here is that there was another notification received, where now it has told the other player, hey, the game has started. Oh yeah, it's running. I probably should play this. So I'm trying to hit these buttons. I'm very terrible at this, by the way. I've been told that we have at least a couple people on our team who've gotten quite good at this. But I myself am not very good at it.
All in the name of testing, of course.
All in the name of testing. Yeah, it's like I said, our focus wasn't on the gameplay itself. We're not out to build games. We're out to build the systems behind those games. So now it's waiting, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to send the end game. I'm going to populate a message there. Give that, and I'm going to tell it that the other player scored 1,000. No, but yeah, let's just do 10. We'll make the other player lose. So I'm going to send that message, and then we're going to see that the game is now saying, oh, your opponent had 10. You had 29. You won. Great job. And now I'm back to my main menu. In the meantime, you can kind of see here in this log inspector all of the messages that were received. We actually have something that kind of does like a kind of a low speed update. So you can kind of see where your opponent is, like how much they've gotten a score for, and you can also see the event that we sent here. So all of that's there so that you can, again, you can go back to Unity now. Maybe you tweak your game a little bit and then try it again as a way to figure out what works, what doesn't.
Okay. All right. I think I have a reasonable sense of where we're starting from. So you're currently in preview. I think you already told us that developers can build, they can test in preview, but they can't yet move to production. What do we expect developers to be doing right now as part of the preview?
It's a big part of that, I think, is to learn how the features work, to provide features, look at the documentation, understand the APIs that we have. Most of the APIs we have right now, I would say that between now and GA, we'll be adding a significant number more APIs, but the ones that we have today are a good example of what to expect. They're kind of a spread across multiple features, so that you can kind of get an idea for what all the different features might be. The main thing right now is to learn how to use it as a system, and then again, so we can get some feedback and say what are the most important features that our customers do want.
Right. Tell us what you need, basically.
Yeah. Tell us what. We want to be very responsive.
Okay. I know developers like to build a game and then get it out to a worldwide audience as quickly as possible. What should they be thinking about in terms of AWS locations and regions and so forth?
So we're currently in our preview again. We are launched in just one region, and that is the US East 1 region. We will be for GA moving to, I believe it's 2 additional regions, and more after that. The main thing here is I think that you want to have a game in general, you want to have your game backend as close to your players as you can. The latency that we have internally versus the latency that is provided by the internet, without our desire or want, generally that internet latency is much higher.
Makes sense. Okay. What are you thinking, given that you are in preview, what are you and the team thinking about in terms of a pricing model for this?
It's definitely comparable with current services that are available. I believe we have. I think we actually have it on our pricing page. I don't recall the number off the top of my head though. But it's usage-based pricing. We went with a simple pricing model. The idea is that you
Mhm.
pay for what you use. Um, you don't pay for a server running 24/7 that
Mhm.
is that is basically racking up cost even if you don't have players using it.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I have certainly learned a lot. Steve, how about you? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have. I'm beginning to regret like you that gaming kind of passed me by at the time, right? The last game I remember playing was 52 card pickup with a punch card deck, but
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that you hit that time zone. I think I hit the time when maybe not the first program that I wrote, but the second program that I wrote as a teenager was a game. The first one was like a Hello World.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone gets Hello World.
Got to start there. Got to start there. Awesome. Well, Ray, this has been really,
Yeah.
really interesting. Did we post a link in the chat for our customers or our audience to learn more? Hopefully we'll
Hopefully
do that.
somebody had a chat comment somewhere.
Yeah, well, they can certainly do a
Sure,
quick search
yeah.
for Amazon GameSparks. I'm sure they can find that. Well, Ray, we really appreciate your time, and we'll definitely have you back when you are as you graduate from preview to GA. So thanks so much for stopping by today.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to that.